This week, I'd like to shine the spotlight on a question that has actually come up in a couple of different coaching calls this week. After listening to my clients share about particular situations that they were encountering, dealing with, struggling with, the question that came to mind is this: what have you become really good at working around in your business? Not fixing, not changing, working around. In other words, it's not working very well for you, but we are so industrious. We find a way to work around it. Unfortunately, those workarounds take time, energy, and effort that makes our business even more cumbersome than it needs to be. And because we're business owners, we've been in business for a few years, we become remarkably adept at working around things. We adjust. We compensate. We find another way. And because we are so resourceful, we make it work. Until eventually, without even noticing it, our business has become very cumbersome. Now, I started thinking about this because there's an interesting thing that happens when you've been in business for a long time. See if you can relate to this. You know your business really well. In fact, you know it so well, you know exactly how to compensate for the parts of your business that aren't working particularly well. You know what client processes require some additional time, and so you compensate. You know which offers might take more energy to roll out, and so you adjust. You know what part of your marketing you tend to avoid until you absolutely positively have to do it, and so you accommodate it. And because you know how to make all of these adjustments, compensate for it, from the outside, everything looks really good. Technically, it's fine. But there's a difference between something that's working and something that you have simply learned how to make work. That distinction is what interests me. Because when we repeatedly compensate for something, the workaround can become so familiar that we stop seeing it as an encumbrance. We just see it as simply a part of running our business. We might find ourselves saying something like, that's just the way I have to do it. Or that particular client process takes more time. Or I know this offer takes a lot out of me, but it's worked well for me in the past. And on we go. But here's what's becoming very clear to me. The things we repeatedly work around may be telling us something. Not necessarily that they're wrong, and certainly that we need to immediately get rid of them. But those clues, those hints, might deserve more curiosity than we've been giving them. Because a workaround is often a response to friction. And friction leaves clues. Maybe the way you're delivering an offer no longer works particularly well for you. Maybe the language is off. Maybe the promise of the offer is no longer something that excites you. Maybe the clients you're attracting require more support than what you are willing to provide at this point in your business. Maybe you've built a strategy around something that you consistently resist. Or maybe you're simply trying to make something work because you've invested so much time, money, energy, and effort to make it work. That's where I think experience can be both an advantage and a disadvantage. Experience makes us incredibly resourceful. We solved problems before, we can do it again. We've adapted before, we can do it again. We figured it out. We know how to keep going. We're resilient. And that's a wonderful capability to have. But sometimes that same resourcefulness allows us to tolerate things much longer than we otherwise would. So instead of asking, why does this require so much effort? We become adept at providing the effort that's required. Instead of asking, why do I keep avoiding this? We create a system or a workaround to make sure that we eventually get it done. Instead of asking, what part of my business is draining my energy? We just rearrange our calendar to accommodate it. I think this is worth noticing because sometimes the question isn't, how can I get better at managing this? A more useful question is, why am I having to manage around this? Now that's a very different question that opens up the door to a very different conversation. I want to be very clear about something. Now, I'm not suggesting that every inconvenience in a business is a sign that something needs to change. Every business has things that we don't particularly enjoy doing. Every business requires compromise. And sometimes a workaround is simply a smart solution. But when the same kind of friction keeps appearing day after day, week after week, when you find yourself kind of repeatedly compensating for the same thing, I want you to become curious because repetition matters. One frustrating afternoon might be just that, a frustrating afternoon. But again, if that frustration continues day after day, week after week, and you've been quietly accommodating it, that's a very different situation. And there's a pattern there for you to see. Patterns are information. So maybe this week, instead of asking yourself what's wrong with your business, notice what you've become exceptionally adept at working around. The things you automatically compensate for. Places where you've created little adjustments. The things you explain away because that's just how it is. And then ask yourself, what if this isn't simply something I need to manage? What if it's trying to tell me something? Maybe it's a clue. Now here's the thing. Once you start asking these questions, the answers may not come to mind right away. You have opened the door to your creative thinking and curiosity. So you don't have to make a decision or have an answer right away. In fact, it's better if you don't, because that gives you time to really explore, be curious. Just notice what comes up for you this week. Because sometimes the things that we become best at accommodating are the very things that have stopped being able to work for us. My invitation to you for this week, looking through this new lens, is what you've learned to work around, maybe showing you what needs your attention. That's an important difference between looking for what's wrong and becoming curious about what keeps asking for your attention. One sends us searching for problems. The other helps us notice patterns. I'm Susan Bach, and I thank you for spending a few minutes with me today looking at your business through a different lens. Until next time, remember, patterns always leave clues. Understanding the clues changes everything.